I want to continue our study that we started on last time, entitled God's Code of Ethics. I've been reading and studying from a book entitled Sinai Mountain in regard to Rick Adderley, who was written about that, and along with some other studies that have tried to come together to try to do our best to get even a deeper insight as we study God's great book, the Bible, in our challenges that we face down here in regard to our character crisis. And so again, we begin in the book of Exodus around chapter 20. Let's check the book. In Exodus chapter 20, beginning around verse number 1, we find these words. And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images of any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. As we said before, we find Moses writing, and he says, God spoke. So the words that are being spoken, Moses says very clearly, they're not my words, but this is from God himself. And so as God talks to his people, before he will tell them about the areas in regard to their character that they need to really have some very motivation in regard to how to conduct themselves down there. They are free. They have been delivered from Egyptian bondage. But when you're free, you ought to know what you can do and what you cannot do. And so now he speaks from on high down at Mount Sinai. And so around verse 2, the Bible says that the Lord says to Israel, I am the Lord thy God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. So he says that the first thing that you must do in regard to making sure you have your things or your ducks in a row, make sure that I'm first. And therefore, you need to recognize that what makes me first, I'm God. That I don't have to say anymore. That means that I am. That means that I've always been. I never cease to be here. Everything that's made is made because of me. I'm self-sufficient. I need nobody at any time. Therefore, based on that alone, you ought to now listen and take heed to what I'm about to say. Have no other gods, therefore, before me. And based on the fact that I brought you out of Egyptian bondage, that ought to mean something and say to you, you ought to obey what I say. Then he says, there's a second commandment that you need to consider before I tell you about what you need to do to conduct your lives. First, make sure there is no other gods before me. Second, though, don't make any graven images and worship them. And I think what we need to understand here is this, that folk can worship not just something that's made physically by hands, that is gold or silver, or even worship folk that you can see, your wives, your husband, or things, cars and houses and things of that nature. But we can make images in our mind. We can have a conception of God that we worship that we ought not to worship. Now, the backdrop or the rationale or reason of the second commandment, and that is not to worship any image of God, is based basically on this idea. Any image that one worships really devalues, demeans who God really is. Let's check the book. In the book of Psalms, the 115th division of Psalms, beginning around verse number 4. Let's check the book. In Psalms 115, around verse number 4, watch what the psalmist writes. Let's check the book. He says, their idols are silver and gold, the work of men's hands. They have mouths, watch this, but they speak not. Eyes have they, but they see not. They have ears, but they hear not. Noses have they, but they smell not. They have hands, but they handle not. Feet have they, but they walk not. Neither speak they through their throat. They that make them are like unto them, so is everyone that trusteth in them. And so he says, any idols that are made, they cannot talk, speak, smell, hear, and so they are made by the hands of men. Therefore, God created man. How can man or anything that man makes represent who God is? Anything that's made or thought of devalues who God is. What can be compared to God? Let's check the book. In the book of Isaiah chapter 40, Isaiah brings this question of mine around verse number 18. Let's check the book. In Isaiah chapter 40, around verse number 18. Listen to what the Bible says. Isaiah 40, around verse 18, Isaiah says these words. He says, to whom then will you liken God? Or what likeness will ye compare unto him? Isaiah says, who in the world can really come up with something that would equate to God? Since God created everything, how in the world can there be something that equates to God? Church, let's check the book. In Isaiah 40, around verse number 24, Isaiah says it this way. He says, yea, they shall not be planted, yea, they shall not be sown, yea, their stalk shall not take root in earth, and he shall also blow upon them, and they shall wither, and the whirlwind shall take them away as stubble. He says, to whom then will ye liken me? Or shall I be equal, saith the Holy One? So he says, even that tree that he's talking about here, that someone would cut down and now talk to and make it a God. Would you liken God to a tree that can be cut down by man? The rationale says this in so many words. The problem is that man has become the creator. He creates God in his own image and forgot to recognize that God is the creator. God has created man and not man creating God. Let's check the book. In the book of Romans around chapter 1, beginning around verse 23, let's check the book. In Romans chapter 1, Paul writes about this idea of man now worshiping the creature more than the creator. And notice what he says. Around verse 23, he utters these words, and change the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves. And so Paul writes about it. And he says, man now has taken that which God created and taken that thing and made that a God to serve.